The motorcycle industry is facing a storm. Harley-Davidson's electric gamble failed. KTM is drowning in debt. Ducati is abandoning its engineering soul. And behind the scenes, powerful forces are reshaping everything riders thought they knew. This is the full story. Corporate collapses, secret rescues, and the future of riding itself. The Austrian manufacturing meltdown. How does a company owing 1.6 billion euros in debt still find ways to get deeper into trouble? Welcome to the Stefan Zuckerling saga, where friendship, business, and betrayal collide in Austrian courtrooms while an entire industry watches nervously. Zuckerling is not just another disgruntled investor, he is a board member of KTM who also runs Remis, a company making official KTM accessory exhausts. When KTM's parent company, Pyrum Mobility, found itself drowning in debt during self-administration, Zuckerling stepped forward with an 80 million euro loan. However, trust evaporated when Zuckerling alleged that KTM leadership was not honest about their financial problems. The numbers paint systematic corporate breakdown. KTM sales dropped 29% from 2023 to 2024. The 250,000 unsold motorcycles sitting in warehouses worldwide represent another dimension of the crisis. These are not just numbers on spreadsheets, they are finished products that represent months of labor and millions of euros in working capital that cannot be recovered until someone actually buys them. Production shutdowns have become routine rather than exceptional. The human cost extends far beyond executive boardrooms. 1,850 employees have lost their jobs since the crisis began, with more layoffs likely as the company struggles to match production capacity with realistic sales projections. As KTM faced corporate death, a dramatic rescue was about to unfold that would fundamentally alter the balance of power in global motorcycle manufacturing forever. The Bajaj Lifeline. Friday, May 23, 2025 will be remembered as the day KTM avoided corporate death at the cost of Austrian independence, marking a fundamental shift in global motorcycle manufacturing power that few people fully understood at the time. As the clock ticked toward the 600 million euro payment deadline, Bajaj Auto Limited stepped forward with financing that saved one of Europe's most recognizable motorcycle brands. But the rescue came with strings attached that would fundamentally alter the DNA of Austrian engineering excellence. Bajaj's 49.9% ownership stake was strategic positioning that made them the logical savior when crisis demanded immediate action. When you own nearly half of a company, letting it fail becomes economic suicide, but salvation came with conditions that fundamentally alter KTM's identity in ways that Austrian engineers are still struggling to comprehend. The financing package reads like a corporate takeover disguised as friendly assistance with decision-making power shifting from European adventure touring expertise to Indian commuter transportation priorities. Austrian engineering pride now depends on Indian corporate decisions made thousands of miles from Mattighofen by executives whose primary market understanding comes from managing millions of daily commuters rather than weekend adventure seekers exploring European mountain passes. The company that once epitomized European motorcycle innovation now answers to shareholders whose engineering philosophy emphasizes efficiency and cost control over the premium performance characteristics that built KTM's global reputation. The financing announcement reads like corporate poetry designed to obscure uncomfortable realities about fundamental shifts in corporate control that Austrian workers are only beginning to understand. Press releases speak of partnership and collaboration while carefully avoiding direct acknowledgement that KTM's future direction will be determined by Indian corporate strategy rather than Austrian engineering tradition, creating cultural displacement that extends far beyond simple ownership changes. Stefan Zuckerling's courtroom battle provides a window into the deception that preceded this rescue, revealing layers of financial manipulation that suggest the crisis ran deeper than anyone outside the inner circle realized. His allegations that KTM leadership was not honest about their financial situation when requesting the 80 million euro loan expose corporate relationships built on incomplete information and questionable trust, suggesting that even board members were not fully informed about the company's true condition. The restructuring profit projection of 1.3 billion euros sounds impressive until you realize it comes from writing off 70% of existing debt, essentially declaring that suppliers and creditors will absorb the majority of KTM's financial obligations while the company emerges with a clean balance sheet. This mathematical sleight of hand transforms corporate failure into apparent success while distributing the actual costs throughout the European supply chain. The human cost of this rescue extends beyond simple employment numbers to encompass the psychological impact on Austrian workers who built careers around European engineering excellence, only to discover that their professional futures depend on Indian corporate priorities they cannot influence or predict. The cultural implications of this ownership shift will affect everything from product development priorities to manufacturing techniques that defined KTM's character. Survival was just the first challenge. Turning the lights back on would prove far more difficult than anyone imagined, as the company discovered that rescue and recovery are entirely different challenges requiring different skills and different sacrifices. We tracked down court documents, interviewed industry insiders, and calculated the real costs of KTM's collapse across hundreds of suppliers. You just got the complete picture of how corporate bankruptcy legally steals from small businesses. If this deep dive opened your eyes, subscribe for more industry truth. The production restart nightmare. Turning lights back on was just the beginning. The real challenge was remembering how to build motorcycles after months of shutdown and uncertainty. Mattighofen's production lines tell stories that balance sheets cannot capture. Skilled technicians returning to workstations discover that manufacturing excellence is not just about machinery, it is about rhythm, confidence, and institutional knowledge that disappears during extended shutdowns. The 250,000 motorcycle inventory backlog represents more than storage problems. It is a quality control nightmare threatening KTM's reputation. These motorcycles sat in warehouses with batteries draining, fluids degrading, and rubber components aging in ways that compromise performance. Each motorcycle requires individual attention before sale to customers expecting factory-fresh performance. Supply chain coordination involves more than ordering parts, as many suppliers reduced production capacity during KTM's crisis. Quality assurance managers face the impossible challenge of maintaining KTM's reputation while working with suppliers who may have reduced their quality control investments during the lean months. International logistics become more complex when production schedules become unreliable. Dealers who planned inventory based on expected delivery dates now face empty showrooms because promised motorcycles are not available when expected. The reputation damage from missed delivery promises can take extended periods to repair even after production fully resumes. While KTM struggled to restart production, across the Atlantic, Harley-Davidson faced a shareholder revolution that would determine the future of American motorcycle manufacturing. Now, if you follow corporate warfare, you know preparation matters. Everything we rely on is linked in the description. Check it out. The Shareholder Revolution. H Partners' campaign against Harley-Davidson's leadership represents more than financial activism. It is a fundamental challenge to corporate governance in American manufacturing that threatens to redefine how iconic companies balance tradition with innovation. Their freedomangle.com website reads like a manifesto, challenging modern corporate strategy with traditional American motorcycle values, creating a digital battleground where nostalgia confronts corporate reality in the most public way possible. The timing could not be more dramatic or strategically calculated. As Chief Executive Officer Jochen Zeitz prepares for retirement, H Partners conducts a public referendum on his strategic direction, ensuring that his legacy becomes inextricably linked to shareholder approval or rejection. This creates personal stakes that extend beyond corporate performance to encompass professional reputation and historical judgment that will follow Zeitz long after his departure from Milwaukee. Livewire's termination sits at the center of shareholder demands, but implications extend beyond discontinuing an unprofitable product line to encompass fundamental questions about corporate risk-taking, market research accuracy, and executive accountability. The 33 motorcycle disaster becomes a symbol of everything shareholders believe is wrong with current management, transforming product failure into a leadership referendum that could reshape corporate culture entirely. The demand for air-cooled 883 Sportster reintroduction reveals tension between nostalgia and regulatory reality that cannot be resolved through shareholder pressure alone. Those beloved motorcycles that defined Harley's character cannot simply be put back into production because emissions regulations have evolved beyond what air-cooled engines can achieve without fundamental redesign that would compromise the authentic experience shareholders claim to want. Corporate board dynamics become fascinating theater when outside investors challenge management decisions this aggressively, creating internal conflicts that test every aspect of corporate governance structure. Board members who approved Livewire investments now face potential career consequences if shareholder pressure succeeds in changing corporate direction, forcing them to choose between supporting management decisions they previously endorsed and appeasing investors who control their future appointments. Employee morale suffers when corporate strategy becomes the subject of public battles between management and investors, creating uncertainty that affects everything from daily decision-making to long-term career planning. Workers who dedicated years to electric motorcycle development watch their projects become political footballs in shareholder disputes that reduce their professional achievements to ammunition in corporate warfare. Dealer network confidence erodes when manufacturer direction becomes unpredictable, forcing business partners to make investment decisions without knowing whether current strategies will survive shareholder challenges. Harley dealers who invested in electric motorcycle capabilities now wonder whether those investments will become worthless if new leadership abandons electric strategies, creating financial uncertainty that ripples through the entire dealer network. The corporate battles created cascading effects that would threaten the survival of countless smaller companies throughout the entire manufacturing ecosystem, revealing how shareholder disputes at major manufacturers could destroy businesses that had no voice in the conflicts determining their fate. The supply chain avalanche. When giants fall, they do not fall alone. They take entire ecosystems with them. The KTM crisis extends far beyond Matagofen's factory walls, creating a cascading disaster that threatens hundreds of smaller companies throughout Europe's motorcycle supply chain. Consider the mathematics of survival when you are owed money by a company undergoing debt restructuring. KTM suppliers will recover exactly 30% of what they are owed if they are lucky and the restructuring succeeds. That means a supplier owed 100,000 euros gets 30,000 euros back, with the remaining 70,000 euros simply disappearing. Small family-owned businesses that specialized in KTM-specific components face existential questions about future viability. These companies often lack the diversification necessary to survive losing their largest customer, especially when that loss involves writing off 70% of outstanding receivables. The most insidious aspect of supply chain disruption involves the loss of institutional knowledge and manufacturing capability. When specialized suppliers go out of business, their expertise disappears from the marketplace permanently. These companies often possess unique manufacturing processes that took extended periods to develop and cannot be easily replaced. Cross-industry dependencies reveal themselves during crises in unexpected ways. Motorcycle components often share manufacturing processes with automotive, aerospace, or industrial equipment sectors. When motorcycle demand collapses, specialized manufacturers serving multiple industries face reduced economies of scale that increase costs for all their customers. As supplier networks crumbled, the entire motorcycle industry faced a reckoning with economic forces that threatened its very existence. The luxury goods reckoning. The middle class was not just squeezed, their discretionary spending became the motorcycle industry's nightmare. American families sitting around kitchen tables, staring at monthly budgets that no longer balance, represent the human face of Harley-Davidson's sales catastrophe. These are not abstract economic statistics. They are real people choosing between mortgage payments and motorcycle dreams, between college savings and weekend escapes. The Federal Reserve's interest rate policies, designed to combat inflation, created unintended consequences that ripple through every sector dependent on discretionary spending. Harley-Davidson dealerships across America tell similar stories of customers who desperately want to buy but simply cannot make the numbers work. These are lifelong enthusiasts who have dreamed of owning a Harley throughout extended periods but find themselves priced out by economic realities beyond their control. The cultural implications extend far beyond simple sales figures. Motorcycle ownership in America represents more than transportation. It is about identity, community, and the pursuit of freedom that defines the American experience. When economic pressure forces people to abandon those dreams, something fundamental about American culture begins to fade. Latin American markets present even more dramatic examples of economic pressure destroying motorcycle demand. Countries dealing with currency instability see luxury goods like premium motorcycles become completely unaffordable for all but the wealthiest citizens. While manufacturers struggled with collapsing demand, a technological revolution was quietly reshaping the future of motorcycle engineering. The Ducati engine revolution. What if the biggest breakthrough was not about more power, but smarter power that would fundamentally change how motorcycles work? Ducati's abandonment of their signature desmodromic valve system represents more than simple engineering evolution. It is the end of an era that defined Italian motorcycle excellence. The Desmo system, with its mechanically operated valves that opened and closed without springs, was not just a technical solution, it was Ducati's engineering soul made manifest in metal and precision. The new V2 engine that is replacing the Testastretta across Ducati's lineup tells a story of practical innovation overcoming romantic engineering tradition. Variable valve timing on the intake side delivers the kind of flexible power delivery that modern riders actually need, rather than the peak power bragging rights that dominated motorcycle marketing. This is not about making motorcycles faster, it is about making them better. Monster enthusiasts watching Spy Shot Revelations understand they are witnessing the transformation of one of motorcycling's most beloved naked bikes. The circular daytime running light that references original Monster styling cues represents Ducati's attempt to maintain emotional connection while everything else changes. Engineering teams at Ducati faced impossible choices between tradition and progress when developing the V2 power plant. Maintaining desmodromic valve operation would have preserved Ducati's technical mystique, but at the cost of service intervals, manufacturing complexity, and the variable valve timing that makes modern engines so much more usable. Service interval extension represents a fundamental shift in Ducati ownership experience that affects customer satisfaction more than peak power numbers. Previous Ducati owners accepted frequent, expensive maintenance as the price of Italian engineering excellence, but modern customers expect reliability without compromise. This engineering revolution was just one piece of a larger puzzle that would determine whether traditional motorcycling could survive the coming transformation. The electric motorcycle reality check. Your electric motorcycle future? It just hit a brick wall called economics, revealing that revolutionary technology means nothing without market acceptance. Zero motorcycle dealers across the United Kingdom face an uncomfortable truth that £9,996 in discounts cannot hide. Electric motorcycles have become desperate clearance merchandise rather than desirable transportation. The SRS Tourer's normal price of £23,995 becomes just under £14,000 with dealer incentives, a discount so massive it reveals fundamental disconnect between manufacturing costs and market demand. Range anxiety affects motorcycle riders differently than car drivers because motorcycles cannot carry massive battery packs necessary for extended range without becoming too heavy and expensive for practical use. Harley-Davidson Chief Executive Officer Jochen Zeitz's blame shifting toward charging infrastructure reveals corporate leadership refusing to acknowledge product and pricing failures that created the LiveWire disaster. The original LiveWire's $29,799 price tag demonstrates complete disconnection from motorcycle market realities. Royal Enfield's Flying Flea represents a different approach that acknowledges market realities rather than fighting them. Urban-focused design with modest performance expectations and presumably more reasonable pricing could succeed where high-performance, high-price electric motorcycles have failed. Manufacturing cost challenges for electric motorcycles extend beyond simple component expenses to encompass entirely different supply chains, quality control procedures, and service requirements that traditional motorcycle manufacturers must develop from scratch. As electric dreams crumbled, manufacturers faced an even more fundamental challenge: finding new riders to replace the aging enthusiasts leaving the market. The new Rider Recruitment War. When does motorcycle safety become marketing strategy? When survival depends on fresh blood entering a market where traditional riders are aging out faster than new enthusiasts are joining. Kawasaki's £500 discount for newly licensed riders represents more than simple promotional pricing. It is recognition that the motorcycle industry faces an existential demographic crisis. The 12-month validity period after passing riding tests creates urgency that encourages immediate purchasing decisions rather than allowing new riders to lose enthusiasm during extended consideration periods. Honda CB125F idle stop technology represents the kind of practical innovation that matters more to new riders than performance specifications that dominate motorcycle marketing. Entry-level motorcycle segment importance for industry sustainability becomes clear when analyzing age demographics of current motorcycle owners versus new license statistics. The average age continues increasing in most developed markets, indicating that replacement riders are not joining fast enough to maintain market size as older riders retire from motorcycling. Economic barriers affecting traditional motorcycle market entry patterns reflect broader changes in young adult financial circumstances that make discretionary purchases like motorcycles more difficult to justify. Student loan debt, housing costs, and economic uncertainty affect disposable income availability among demographics that traditionally provided new motorcycle buyers. Training program partnerships between manufacturers and riding schools create synergistic relationships that benefit both parties while addressing new rider development needs. Manufacturers gain access to potential customers during their most receptive period, while riding schools benefit from manufacturer support that can improve training quality. While manufacturers fought for new riders, regulatory pressure was systematically eliminating the motorcycles that defined the sport's emotional core. The performance motorcycle evolution. What happens when the fastest bikes cannot meet tomorrow's rules? Innovation or extinction becomes the defining question for an entire motorcycle category that has defined riding passion for generations. The performance motorcycle segment faces regulatory pressure so intense that traditional approaches to engine design, exhaust systems, and noise levels are becoming impossible to reconcile with government mandates that prioritize environmental compliance over enthusiast satisfaction. Yamaha's V4 engine development for MotoGP represents more than racing technology. It is potentially the foundation for future performance motorcycles that can meet emissions regulations while maintaining the power and character that make riding emotionally meaningful. The millions invested in premier racing development may represent the only viable path forward for manufacturers desperate to preserve high-performance street motorcycles in an increasingly regulated world. BMW's concept bike teaser suggests major developments in supersport motorcycle design that could influence the entire performance category, hinting at solutions that balance regulatory compliance with the raw excitement that defines motorcycle culture. The discontinuation of Yamaha's MT-10 naked bike and R1 Supersport in European markets demonstrates how emissions regulations are eliminating traditional performance motorcycles faster than manufacturers can develop compliant replacements, creating a regulatory extinction event happening in real time. Racing technology transfer from MotoGP to production motorcycles becomes more critical as manufacturers struggle to develop performance solutions that satisfy both regulatory requirements and enthusiast expectations without compromising the soul of what makes motorcycles emotionally compelling. The V4 engine configuration used in premier motorcycle racing may represent the only viable path forward for high-performance street motorcycles that can survive government scrutiny while delivering the experience riders actually want. Emissions regulation impact on traditional performance categories extends beyond simple power reduction to affect fundamental engine characteristics that define motorcycle personality in ways that threaten the very essence of riding culture. The sound, throttle response, and power delivery that create emotional connections between riders and motorcycles face elimination through regulatory compliance requirements that treat motorcycles like cars rather than understanding their unique cultural significance. Manufacturing investment priorities shifting toward compliant performance solutions require fundamental changes in engineering approaches that have dominated performance motorcycle development over extended periods, forcing companies to abandon proven technologies in favor of experimental solutions that may not deliver the riding experience that built motorcycle enthusiasm. Global market segmentation based on regulatory environments creates situations where performance motorcycles available in some countries become illegal illegal in others, fragmenting markets and complicating manufacturing planning in ways that increase costs and reduce innovation incentives. The cultural implications of performance motorcycle extinction extend beyond simple product availability to threaten the subcultures and communities built around high-performance riding that sustain motorcycle enthusiasm across generations. Track day events, racing schools, and enthusiast gatherings depend on availability of motorcycles that may not survive regulatory evolution, potentially eliminating the pathways through which new riders discover performance riding and develop the passion that sustains motorcycle culture. The timeline for this transformation is shorter than most riders realize, with changes happening so rapidly that the performance motorcycles defining current riding dreams may become impossible to purchase within the next few years, regardless of customer demand or manufacturer desires. All these crises converge toward a single, inescapable conclusion that would reshape everything motorcyclists thought they knew about their sport, forcing a reckoning with whether motorcycle culture could survive the complete transformation of everything that made riding meaningful. The industry transformation endgame. The motorcycle industry was not just changing, it was becoming something entirely different, and the transformation would determine whether motorcycling culture could survive the next decade. Traditional motorcycle enthusiasts watching heritage brands transform beyond recognition face cultural extinction as much as product evolution. The motorcycles that defined generations of riders, air-cooled Harleys, high-revving Japanese supersports, characterful European twins, face elimination through regulatory pressure, economic constraints, and changing consumer preferences that prioritize practicality over passion. Buell Super Cruiser and Super Tourer pricing at $25,900 and $23,995 respectively demonstrates how specialized manufacturing creates costs that push motorcycles beyond most buyers' financial reach. Manufacturing consolidation acceleration through financial crisis resolution creates fewer but larger motorcycle companies with reduced competition and innovation incentives. The diversity that created motorcycle culture through different approaches to design, engineering, and market positioning faces elimination through economic necessity rather than consumer preference. Global supply chain reorganization shifts production capabilities toward Asian manufacturers who combine lower costs with increasing technical sophistication. The geographic center of motorcycle manufacturing continues moving away from traditional centers of innovation and craftsmanship. Consumer preference shifts reflect demographic changes that prioritize different values than traditional motorcycle buyers. Environmental consciousness, urban mobility needs, and economic pragmatism create market demand for products that may not satisfy traditional motorcycle enthusiasts but appeal to larger consumer segments. Market segmentation evolution suggests the future motorcycle industry may serve distinct customer groups with products that share little common heritage. Electric urban commuters, adventure touring motorcycles, and performance track bikes may develop into separate industries with different technologies, supply chains, and consumer bases. Environmental regulation evolution suggests current emissions and noise standards represent early steps in processes that may eventually eliminate internal combustion motorcycles entirely. The transition timeline may be shorter than manufacturers and enthusiasts currently anticipate, forcing more rapid adaptation than industry planning assumes. The motorcycle culture preservation efforts by enthusiasts, collectors, and specialty manufacturers may create parallel markets for traditional motorcycles that maintain heritage values while mainstream manufacturers pursue mass market opportunities with different products and technologies. The future had arrived, and it looked nothing like anyone expected, challenging every assumption about what motorcycles should be, who should ride them, and whether the freedom and passion that defined motorcycle culture could survive transformation into something entirely different. The choices made in boardrooms today will echo in the roar of engines or the silence of electric motors for generations to come. Will motorcycle culture survive this complete transformation of everything that made riding meaningful? Share your thoughts on whether heritage brands can adapt without losing their soul. Hit subscribe for more industry deep dives, and thanks for watching this breakdown of motorcycling's uncertain future.